Already, Zero to Hero, Governance and LLM, Lesson 1. Today we are looking at solutions within Power Platform. I haven't created a script for it, so it's going to be improvised Victor knowledge of solutions. And anybody else who is on the call who wants to chime in and talk about their experience, raise your hand. You can, I'm sure we can all add to it. Um, by maybe a comment or hands raised, we'll try this. Have you had any exposure to solutions within Power Platform? Maybe you can put it on the chat. On the chat. Okay, we had a few people already saying yes. Um, okay, that's very good. Good to know. All right. So a lot of people have exposure and a few who are looking for some guidance. All right, cool, cool. Essentially, solutions have been part of the dynamic CRM product for a while. And it is essentially the means by which we organize our components within Power Platform as well. Power Platform being um, a latter version of what we were used to from Dynamic CRM, but also with Power Platform being a container or a box for other things that were not part of Dynamic CRM, that is Power Automate flows, Canvas app, and such. Solutions have become essentially the only means that we can sanely move components from places, from different environments. Okay, we are not going to talk about environments, tenants in this lessons. The assumption is that you have already been exposed to that knowledge before. But if you want to move components from one place to another, best way to do it is with solutions. Now, the Power Platform has matured to incorporate some of those other components that were not part of the native CRM, that is for 2011, 2013, 2015, 2016. But they have, Microsoft has accommodated solutions to also support those components. That is Canvas apps, Power Virtual Agents, and flows for that matter. All right. So I can't have an environment in Power Platform that does not have a database. What I mean by that, if you go to the admin site for Power Platform, and I say new, and I'll just select sandbox, give it a name, test. I have an option down here that it's essentially a question asking me whether I wanted to create a database for my environment or not. And in the back end, for the folks who have worked with Dynamics CRM in the past, essentially we are creating a Dynamics, well, let me step back a little bit, a Dataverse database for this environment. Now, the only way that we can play with solutions essentially and add components to it is if I have a database. So if you have an environment that you have created in the past that doesn't have a database, first thing you have to make sure is that you have a Dataverse database. Now, when you search these things online, you see that this database have been called multiple things in the past. So if you're looking for information, if you're looking for knowledge there, at times you see the community talking about it as plain old Dynamics CRM, sometimes Dynamics 365 CE, and then the transition to CDS. You see people refer to this database as CDS as well. And finally, um, Dataverse. Okay, so if you're searching this particular information online, you see multiple different references to this type of database. Now, we are playing with solutions, okay? To facilitate our solutions and how our components are added to those solutions, we need to create a database for it as well. All right. So that's first and foremost. Now, when we create an environment, if I go back to make.powerapps.com, you land on this screen. Okay. And you have different options here. From the get-go, I could create apps. I can create tables. I can create different components in my environment. Okay. And then you have an area here called Dataverse that lists tables within the Dataverse. You'll notice that when I click on tables, it's going to list tables that are associated with the database that I created when I provision my environment. All right, from the get-go. If I'm playing with custom components and tables, I can create them directly from this menu or this option, or I can create those guys within solutions. So let's just hop into the solutions area. You see here listed in my solutions area about 5 solutions that Microsoft has added to my environment, and then one that's called the default solution. The default solution will display all components that are part of an environment. So anytime that you want to play with things, you want to know if a table exists, the name of a field internally, you can access the default solution, and then you see a list of everything. This is different from the main menu called Dataverse. Dataverse will show things that Microsoft has created when it created the environment. The default solution will show the same thing plus any table that you create after the fact. All right. So that is the first catch there. Default solution, it's the very lower level, lower layer within your environment in Power Platform. All right. Now, going back to solutions, if you are playing with different components here, you want to test things out, if you want to experiment things, but have the possibility of incorporate those things that you are experimenting into real life assets, if you will, the first thing that I would advise you is to change this common data service default solution to something that you can use moving forward. What I mean by that, associated with solutions, you have this concept of publisher. What is a publisher? If you're working for an ISV company, a company that produces components that are going to be sold in the market, you want to brand your components so that people outside don't take those components and use it for on their own. And also, when you brand your components, it's easy for you to identify what's yours and what's not yours. So the concept of publishers associated to solutions, it is to say, I will create a solution for my components, and I wanted to add my own publisher so that when I create my components, I know it is a component from my company or from my community, whatever the group may be. All right. So I open the Common Data Services default solution. All right. And I'm going to go to Overview. And in here, you see that they already have assigned a publisher to it. And the publisher has a prefix attached to that publisher. So I can either edit this existing publisher to have a prefix that I would like to, or I can create my own. So in this scenario, I will create another publisher. Not sure why my mouse is not going there. Let's see. Let me close this guy real quick. I don't know why these fields are, they seem like they are disabled. It shouldn't be. Okay, we'll take another route. for this one. Okay. So I'll step back, I'll get out of this solution file, and I'll create my own. New solution, I'll call it 02 Hero ALM, and I'll create a new publisher here. So my new publisher is called 02 Hero Publisher. The display name does not like spaces, so I'll get that out. Prefix is going to be hero. I can change this number for option sets or choices if I want, but I'll save this publisher. Okay, sorry, it was the other way around. So display name can contain spaces. All right, so it created my publisher. I'll select this guy here, create my solution, but I still wanted to go back to the Common Data Service default solution, and I want to change the publisher. Overview, edit details, switch the publisher to mine. So now, Victor, why did you do that? Let me explain why I changed the publisher of the Common Data Service default solution to my own. There are a number of features, especially the experimental, the new ones, the features that are on preview that will default the creation of objects to the Common Data Service default solution. Let me show you an example. If I go back to the home page, where's the Figma one? They took out the Figma one. Let me refresh my screen. Yeah. Let's say that I want to create a map from an image. If I do it from here, my app will be created in the Common Data Service solution. Therefore, now that I have that app using my publisher, the name of the object will be prefixed with hero instead of the CR873 whatever, right? So before, and then because I created it with my own prefix, I can now transfer that app to my solution and then export it to different environment in a way that that app is branded with my publisher prefix. Does that make sense to everybody? So, and the same goes to a lot of different things within the platform. Mariano, I think you have your hands raised. You can go ahead and unmute yourself and speak.
Yeah, there's only one thing I wanted to add there. If you are going to publish your Power Platform solutions as an ISV, you must contact Microsoft to get a prefix and a resource number to start from, because they're pretty strict about that. You cannot just make up your own prefix if you're an ISV. You have to
Okay.
contact them and get an approved prefix.
Okay, that's very good. And I
Yep.
assume the reason why they want us to do that is so that we don't take others are ISV
Correct.
prefix, right? There is no
Correct.
mix and mingling there. But yeah, so for any components that you wanted to try out, especially things that are in preview or things that Microsoft hasn't yet added on ALM capabilities, you want to change again the name of your the publisher of your Common Data Service default solution to one that you can use. Otherwise, your
Correct.
objects will look very, very strange. Now, another area that this plays out is the Dataverse for Teams. Okay, Dataverse for Teams also uses the Common Data Service default solution. One more area is Power Pages Data Studio. There is a way for you in Power Pages today to create new fields without going to the back end of Dataverse. So that is all going to be created and pushed with the prefix of the publisher associated with the common data service default solution. Celio, I see your hand up. Sorry if I missed you. Do you have a question, comment?
No, 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 I don't. Thank you
All
for
right.
the this tip.
All right. Sounds good. All
I
right.
will remove
So
it.
so that is the first suggestion. Okay. So let's go back to the maker um, environment and look at solutions. Again, first thing I did was creating a publisher and associating this to the common data service. This is what I do pretty much on every single environment that I start. Okay, just to make sure that my objects or objects created by my customers won't get this prefix, because once the object is created, there is no going back. And if a table is created, people starts to put a lot of information on that table and you wanted to rename it, even the internal name, then you have to recreate that structure and copy the data from one place to another. So a lot more work. If you're starting from scratch, I'd say get this done first. Okay, now let's hop into the solution file that I created. This one called Zero to Hero ALM. So when we open the solution, you see on top here, you have this overview, which gives you summary information about the solution itself, a display name, what type of solution it is, the internal name, who is the publisher, whether this solution is a patch or not. Of course, it's not. We just create it. And if you want to add descriptions, you can add description. If your strategy for solution management is to aggregate solutions based on components, then the only place really for you to add any comments about the state of the solution is here at the description field. All right. And of course, if you use version control and whatnot, you can do comments there as well. But within the platform, this is essentially the only area that you can use. And I've seen companies use it a lot where they say, initial build, then they keep on adding to it. Um, Version 1, blah, 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 blah. And then people will know what has happened. Of course, this description field is limited. So you get to a place where it can no longer add to it. Then you'd have to delete the older entries and add more to it. If you prefer to use this method, if you're not doing, version control, but it still helps. I've seen a lot of companies do it this way in the past. All right. Um, Here as well, you can see a list of new items that were added to the solution file. You can see you have access to solution checker. Um, if there is anything on your solution, anything that you build that it's not up to standards to Microsoft, solution checker, we're gonna see it here, the list of items. And then you have other options. If you wanted to configure some other environment settings, you can click here and it will take you to the admin area. Now, you can only land here if you have admin rights either to this environment or admin rights to environments within your tenant. Okay, it is here that you can enable different things. TDS endpoint, if you want to use SQL Management Studio, or even, if you want to allow .NET apps to connect to your Dataverse database through SQL Server. If you want to use SQL Server connection within Power BI as well, you have to enable it. And I think I was here for Teams integration the other day. It is here somewhere, but that's where you enable features. You can always go back one level in the admin panel, or even two levels rather, to see more information on the environment itself. Users, if you want to add an app user to it, it is in this area that you manage that aspect of your environment. Again, admin panel, of course, for administration work. If you want to take it down, if you want to delete this environment, convert to production, copy, restore, backup, so on and so forth. But then more of the development stuff happens in make.powerapps.com. All right. So if I click on the second icon here, you have objects. Now, this is where most of the developers, being citizen developers or even pro developers, will play. In here, I can create tables. So let's do an example. My table name will be events, or event rather. There's a primary column. I'll leave as name. We'll save that table. All right, it has displayed the table for me. I can create a column. I'll just create an easy one, a text column, call it location, single line of text. Let's do 250 characters for this guy. We'll click and save. All right, the column's there. Now I can make changes to forms. I can do all sorts of things, but it's not part of the context of the presentation. What I wanted to show here is how a solution is organized in terms of what you see on this object panel or object 3. You notice that I created an object, it added that object here. I can navigate, I can show columns, so on and so forth. I can go back to this tables layer and also say, I wanted to add an existing table. We'll do the contact table, hit next. Now it's asking me a question. For my solution, do I want to add any of the existing objects? And the way that you have to think about it is essentially not necessarily what you need on your solution only, but also what already exists in the target environment. And what I mean by that is, in my context here, suppose that I'm creating an events management system, okay? My custom table or object so far is the event table, and it has different columns and whatnot. And I am adding or referencing the contact table here, but I know that the target environments will have all the fields that I need for my particular solution. So I don't need to add stuff that already exists in another environment unless I need to make changes to those components or objects in this particular environment for my own requirements. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that for my own requirements, the name of the email field, instead of being called email, it should be called email address. All right. By default, the email field in the contact table, when an environment is created, is just called email or labeled as email. But for my own requirements, I need to make it email address, right? So I need to go ahead and select the email field, this guy here that's labeled as email, add it to my list of objects that I wanted to add to my solution. Then I go to the contact table here. I'll go to that particular email field and I will label it as email address. Okay. So another thing that I would do, oops. Another thing that I would do is for this tables, I need to create a relationship between the two. So I wanna associate contacts to events, in a sense that this person is a participant in a particular event. So I will create a many-to-many relationship. Here, I will select the event table, hit done, and it will create this object for me. All right, so it created the object. Now you'll notice that even though the contact table is referenced in my solution, if I click through all these options, very few components or elements of the contact table are part of my solution. So this is my first suggestion and key on in this lesson or program, is that you build very lean solution files. If you don't need a field in your solution file, remove it. Reason being is because whatever field is set to on your environment, even though you may not have made changes to it, maybe other people have made changes to that particular component within your environment, those changes will be carried on to the next environment when you export the solution. All right. Let's see if there are questions in the chat area. Not yet. All right. We'll keep on tracking. All right. So that is the first suggestion. And I've seen it time and time again, bloated up solutions where, people add everything, especially because this designer doesn't really help us when it comes to adding existing components to a solution. A lot of times when we say add existing, the this portal will ask us if we want to add dependencies, and if we say yes, it's just gonna jam the solution with a lot of stuff that you don't really need. All right. So if I have a dependency for my project, if my project depends on the first and last name of a contact, I know that first and last name exists in all other Dataverse environments. All right, for the contact table. So I don't need to add them to my solution unless, again, I need to make changes to those fields, be it display name or the number of characters that a field should accept, or in case of a numeric field, the range of numbers that that field should accept. So keep that in mind when building solutions. If you don't need to add a field or component to your solution, don't do it. All right, don't do it, because it's going to give you headaches in the end. All right, let's click all the way up in this all option. This all option will list everything that you have on the solution. Of course, it's not going to break down and show you fields within a table. So you need to dive down and then expand and see what fields are part of contact. And there are other tools that can give you that. I'll show you in a minute. But it shows all components. So suppose that I need to add a workflow that already exists. So this is how we navigate. You go to automation, Cloudflow will list Power Automate flows that you have on an environment that you want to add if they already exist. Custom connector, data flow, desktop flow for RPA, dialog in process. And then you can keep on going down and find your components, the components that you need. Now, the ones that are really hidden in this navigation are more pro dev components. So you have to click more and then kind of dive deep and find your stuff. You go into developer for plugin assemblies, custom control, PCF, plugin steps, so on and so forth. So you have to navigate to find those things. And even then, there are a lot more stuff here in order. All right, so there is quite a bit still hidden in this pile. I think there is there is investment in making that experience a little easier, but I don't know when those things will be made available for either public preview or even GA. But that's the way to navigate through things and find your components if you're looking for existing things, right? Of course, if you want to add a new component, the navigation is similar. All right. Cloudflow, you have all three kinds there. Workflows, the native Dataverse workflows would be down here. Table is down here. Now you don't have as many options here for developers when creating a new component. Of course, because it's a code first approach, we have to create the code, load it to the environment, and then we can add it to a solution file. All right. But there are additional options there too. Alrighty. So let's go back to the overview, assuming that I created all the automation that I need to create. And now we are looking for exporting it to another environment. First thing I would do is publish customizations. While it publishes, I have a question here from Gerard Simpson. The question is, when using tables from the common data model, can you run into issues if you're trying to remove fields from that table that have pre-existing relationship? Yeah, you won't be able to delete any fields that are part of the common data model. Microsoft flags that it's a managed. Sorry, I think what you mean is from the common data model solution file. If that is the case, you could delete fields that you create yourself, all right? But you cannot delete fields that are part of the common data model, the database that Microsoft installs when you create a new environment. I hope that made sense to you, Gerard. If not, let me know. I can step back and answer the question again.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you, Victor.
All right. All right. So when we are playing with this guy, first thing I do is publish all customization. Of course, when you hit export, Microsoft will give you an option also to publish. It gives also an option to run the solution checker here if you want to. But if not, you can hit next. Then you have two options. And a lot of people, there are some very vivid discussions out there in the web when it comes to managed solutions versus unmanaged solutions. All right. For me, though, I am a fan of managed solutions, especially because a lot of the implementations that I do for my customers, I start the project, I build the first version, and then I coach the company to take on the full solution. That includes, you know, the product itself that I'm developing plus ALM and all that stuff. So I train the company to carry on with enhancements after that. All right. And the only guarantee for me that people will continue to do what I perceive to be the right thing to do is with if I use managed solution for the different environments, UAT, system integrations, and production. All right. If I leave solutions as a managed, it opens a door for folks to get into those different environments and delete fields, change field types, and then it breaks everything in terms of ALM for me. To give you an example, I've been working for a customer that has a team, an offshore team, and we try to work 24-hour development strategy where the team here in North America codes during the day, and then we have a meeting either at night or very morning pass on the baton, and then the team offshore continues with the code and we pick up the next day. So we try to streamline development. And one of the days, the developer in the offshore team, he deleted a field that was of type decimal, if I'm not mistaken, and recreated that field with the same name in a dev environment as an integer. Now, the solution in the other environment was solution for that component was part of was a managed solution. So when I pick up the work in the morning and I try to move that solution up to the other environment, I got an error. Reason being because that same field in the other environment was a different type. Now, the same problem happens with a managed solution. What I just described, that particular error happens with an unmanaged solution. The difference is this, though. I could go to the other environments, UAT and production, drop that field, and then push my solution again from dev to the other environments, okay? But if I did it um, if I had done that without consulting with the other developers and consulting with the client, I could run into the trouble of deleting information that existed on that field prior the data type change. Okay, so I think the managed solutions add another layer of control on how these changes should be made. Mariano has pointed out also it protects your intellectual property. You know, it's harder for people to mimic or to steal. You know, if people wants to do that, there are ways, but it makes it harder for people to manipulate those things, and it kind of gives you assurance that your components in different environments they look the same field capacity, the ranges, so on and so forth. Okay, so that is a good tip. So if you're moving this solution from dev to UAT or UAT or moving all the way up to production, I would strongly advise you to use managed solutions. Okay, now there is a place for managed solutions, and where they exist, and maybe it's the reason why many people prefer them, is because in the past, folks used the managed solution strategy and they lost the dev environment for some reason. And now all they have is a production environment with a bunch of managed solutions and they wanted to carry on with development. You can't, right? You can't carry on with development or changing those components if all you have is a managed solution. So if you are developing things, and I think in the following lessons, we're going to be talking about CLI and we're going to be talking about Azure Pipeline. Those things are there to facilitate ALM for you. But if you're doing this manually, I'd say, periodically take a backup of your stuff, download an unmanaged solution, put it in version control, and doing so will allow you to um, carry on with development should this environment expire or somebody delete it. You have that safety net there to continue to develop. Another thing that I would mention, if you are managing a if you are managing solution development and you are using components from other people, you access the PCF gallery and you downloaded a cool component from one of the devs there, right? And you install it into your environment, even the dev environment, and you installed it as a managed solution. And now your own unmanaged stuff relies on that component. I would strongly advise you also to download that managed solution zip file and store it somewhere safe. I've seen it time and time and time again where people said, "Oh, I'm going to use this workflow tools from this person because it gives me a lot of functionality." They put it in dev, they install it all over the map, and then eventually that particular version uh, goes out of the map. We don't have it available anymore. The developer who did it's no longer doing development. He killed his repo. Whatever happened, If you don't have that specific version available as install, you're gonna have trouble. Okay, you're gonna have a lot of trouble. So again, you're gonna tap into somebody else's code or features, and you install those things as a managed solution. Keep that zip file safe. Do not lose it. Okay. So this the two strategy goes: have an unmanaged zip file as a safety net if you lose your stuff, and also have the managed solution zip file for whatever dependency that is not Microsoft, of course, you are using for your development. I think Batting said restoring production over dev is the main reason most people have lost their unmanaged layer, from what I have heard. Yep, yep. Yeah, you restore it, it's gone. Then, I mean, if you're doing it from the cloud, you can go back to Microsoft support and try to restore your dev once again. But what I've seen batting is on on-premises version, people just deleted the server for some reason. They thought they didn't need a dev server anymore, and they no longer have a backup for that dev server, and it's done. So be careful when it comes to solution. So I exported my solution. It's an unmanaged solution. It's showing it to me here, so I can download that guy. We're gonna just show this in the folder real quick and just click to open the zip file. You see that for this example, where I don't have a whole lot of components, my solution is composed of 3 files. I can open the solution file, and then you see it's just outlining what I generic information about the solution, the display name, and then the internal name, the version, whether it's managed or not, localized description. This is for English. If I had other languages, I would be able to change it here if I have to. And then information about the publisher down here. So very simple file for my example, but should I have multiple components in different settings, I would see other folders and also other things in this file. Customization file shows the components that are part of this solution. Um, and then there is a content type for my solution. Okay, so it's very simple solution. This is what it looks like. Now with my zip file, I can go back and then go to another environment, go to solutions area and say import solution, and then find my zip file, double click and import it. I'm not gonna do it. I have this environment that I use for other things, but the process is fairly straightforward. You export from one environment and then you import to another environment. Now, things to keep in mind as we navigate through this. These the actions that you see when you are importing and exporting, you should get familiar with those actions, because essentially when we look at automation, using the CLI, Power Platform CLI, or using Azure pipelines, a lot of the questions that we have to fill out in those things, or if we are using the CLI, the options that we type, they will point to something that we select in these options here. All right. So if I am exporting a solution, we'll see there are options that mimic what we are looking here. The version number that we want, how we want this to be exported, so on and so forth. So as you explore on your own this week, pay attention to each of these options, because those options will be referenced as we look at, CLI and other things. All right. Any questions so far? Or I should say, we are 10 minutes out. We can reserve 10 minutes for questions, concerns, comments. Patton, if you want to say anything, I saw you came off. You unmuted yourself. You feel free to add on to the discussion.
I unmuted myself by mistake.
All right, we got a question here. Are we going to access? Are we going to access the recording of the sessions? Yes, I'm gonna move it up to YouTube, and then I'll share the link. It's gonna be a playlist, much like all the other stuff that we have produced in the past. You know, we'll add a playlist just for this governance and ALM um, items. Okay, so folks who may miss a class, they can catch up later on. All right, now because we are using a database, like I said, we have solutions, and we can also add any other component to our solution. So if I hit new and say automation, Cloudflow, let's say this is going to be a instant Cloudflow, and I do this for my flow. So it's a test flow, manually triggered. I need to add a step. Let's do a step list. Oops. Dataverse list rows. Contact. Save. So in this one, I'm just listing all contacts. Not a very optimal flow, but I just wanted to create one. So let's wait for it to save. It's saved. I go back. Now my flow is here, but not only my flow, a connection reference is here as well. The connection that I used within my flow called test to connect to the Dataverse. So I can click on this into this connection reference, and I can add a name. I can say Dataverse connector. I'm not sure why it didn't pick up the internal name. Let's click again. All right. I can rename it Dataverse connector. I could have started by creating this connection reference before I started my flow, or I can even create one and replace it within my flow and delete this one with the funky name as well. All right, so we'll save changes. Now, not only the flow is part of my solution, but also the connection reference is part of my solution. When I export the solution and import to another environment, part of the steps of importing will be a question as to how do you want to set up this connection reference in the target environment. So in this environment, I'm saying I'm going to use my creds. In the other environment, it could be somebody else's creds. And I think I'm not sure if it's being released yet, but it could be a service account as well. But that is it. So for any component within the Power Platform, you have the ability of adding those components to a solution, Canvas apps and amongst any other thing. Now, one thing to keep in mind, Microsoft is running a preview on automatic creation of solutions for Canvas apps. When you create a Canvas app, it creates a solution file automatically. I haven't explored that yet. I don't know if anybody here in the team has explored that particular feature, but I would assume that it will add just a funky name for your solution, and it's not going to respect the publisher of the solution that it creates. So I don't know how useful that is in the end for you. Quick question here from Silvio. I think Batting already replied, so I think that is okay. That's already taken care. All right, we have 5 more minutes. That is all I want to show today. We can take questions here. Wizen, if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, go for it, my friend.
Absolutely, thank you. So actually, I have a question. It's not specifically related to what you showed us today, Victor, but like it's related to ALM. So like the best practices, as you as you explained, is like develop in a development environment, and then like promote to let's say like a UAT environment, and then like promote to a production environment. And really, the default environment shouldn't be part of any of your ALM environments. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, Microsoft indicates that we are never to use the default for any dev or any functionality, even CRM. Now it is weird in a sense because the default environment has the Dataverse table, so accounts, contacts, so on and so forth. So I I would guess it could be used, but there are restrictions. I remember somebody mentioning restrictions around storage size, so I don't know where exactly plays out, but Microsoft has indicated that we are not to play with the default environment.
Well, the truth is, you also don't want to have to be scrolling through 5,000 tables and 3,000 components of different kinds. So the best thing is just use a custom solution for your own objects, and then you add um, to your own solution whatever fields or tables you need from the overall you know CDS.
I think what Wizan's point out it's rather the default environment instead of the default solution. Because I mean, I agree. There is the tables for the default environment where one that everyone gets when they have a tenant in Azure. They are very similar. There may be more. I don't know. I'm not a good example, and unfortunately, I recorded. I have played with my default environment. Okay, so don't crucify me yet. But I'm not using for company related things. I was testing a particular feature. But to your point, Mariano, I think what you were conveying is that even for the default environment there are more tables than what you would see in an environment that you create. I think
Right.
that was the point that he was trying to
Yeah.
make.
If I remember correctly as well, the reason why they don't want you using the default environment is because that's where you want to implement all your governance to begin with. So all your
Hmm.
connectors that are authorized, all your security groups that are authorized to 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 access the environment. And then I think when you create your subsequent environments, they all inherit all those properties automatically.
I
So
see.
I think that's kind of the reason why they don't want you using the default environment for development purposes. Use it to implement all your governance, all your everything governance related. And once you're done, the subsequent environments will just inherit that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. There's just like one, just like I guess challenge that I face, and just wanted to get your thoughts on Vector and Mariano on. So like as per Microsoft, like don't use the default environment, as part of your ALM process. But also like in some special cases, like for example, if you have a flow and its trigger is for a selected item or for a selected file, then actually Microsoft tells you like your flows will not work unless they are in the default environment. And they'll actually like a link to that article from Microsoft. So
Okay.
like, doesn't that contradict best practices?
It would
It
big
would.
time. Yeah. It'd be nice to look at the article, and it could be something that wasn't really uh I shouldn't say thought of, but revised in light of how they're pushing, all the add-on uh, products or features into the context of solution management, right? Because when Flow started, Flow, you couldn't add a flow to a solution back in the day, right? Usually, a lot of people had to recreate manually or find other ways to migrate. But it wasn't part of the same, the Dataverse solution file. Same for other components. PVA became part of solution management recently. Whatever recently looks like with the velocity of the platform. But maybe this hasn't been revised yet. So I'll take a look at it and see what it really means. But it looks as though it's something that hasn't been really taken care in light of all the other changes for Power Platform solution management.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't want to take too much time from the other folks, so I'll stop here. Thank you so much, Marianne and Vector.
Thank you. We'll take a look at it. Maybe
You're
have
welcome.
an answer or maybe no answer next week, but we'll touch base again. Anybody else has questions? All right, I think that's it.
I was hoping to know a bit more about patching and updating the managed solution.
All right, we'll look into that next week. We'll continue on with the basic of solution management. Today was just areas of the platform where to create solutions, best approach for publishing. But we'll take a look at patching and even like managed versus unmanaged, all the things that may impact in our development. But I really appreciate the pointer, Gushan.
Yeah,
We'll make sure that we.
Yeah, the versions, major, minor, that sometimes is confusing, and upgrade, cloning, and patching.
Okay. We'll go through those in not even a week, next Tuesday.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thanks everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Victor.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.